Hello there, welcome. Hope you're having a great day today. My name is Tracy. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. If you are a returning viewer, welcome back. So I do lots of different types of videos. Today is a Bible study video, but I also do videos about thrifting, and I am a travel teacher. So I do vlog videos, kind of taking you on my travels with me. Today, we're going to be taking a look at Leviticus chapters 18, 19, and 20. So we're going to get started with Leviticus chapter 18. Now, this chapter deals with all forbidden sexual practices. We know the book of Leviticus can be a little hard to read. Our previous chapters talked about bodily discharges, which I don't know about you, but that's never really anything that I want to read about. But nevertheless, it is in the book of Leviticus. And now we are looking at some forbidden sexual practices. I have mentioned this before, but a lot of the reasons that these rules were put into place was for the protection of the people, both spiritually and a purification or a safety protection, I guess you could say. I wanted to show you or explain to you a footnote that came from my Bible. It dealt specifically with verses 6 through 27, which is essentially the entire chapter. But you'll notice as you read through this chapter that it gives lots of different specific things that are not allowed. And the reason for these, it says several detestable activities are listed here. Having sexual relations with close relatives, committing adultery, offering children as sacrifices, having homosexual relations, and having sexual relations with animals. These practices were common in pagan religions and cultures, and it is easy to see why God dealt harshly with those who began to follow them. Such practices lead to disease, deformity, and death. They not only lead to that, but they also disrupt family life and society and reveal a low regard for the value of oneself and of others. Society today takes some of these practices lightly, even trying to make them acceptable. But they are still sins in God's eyes. If you consider them acceptable, you are not judging by God's standards. And I know you probably, from just the ones I read there, know what I am referring to. And there is a lot of, I guess you could say, controversy, specifically surrounding homosexuality. Today, I have friends who are homosexuals, and even though I don't agree with them, kind of ironic how I'm talking about homosexuality and my camera cuts off. Anyway, even though I may disagree with someone who is a homosexual, I still love that person. And I think that, there's a fine line between condoning or supporting and still loving someone. I like to say I can love the person and hate the sin. So I'm not saying that we should treat anyone any differently, but just because I show you respect and I show love to you does not mean that I necessarily agree with you. So that is Leviticus chapter 18. Leviticus chapter 19. There is a lot in this chapter about a lot of different things. You can read through and see the rules about lots of different topics and scenarios, and I love one thing that my footnote says about basically this entire chapter. It says, do not. Some people think the Bible is nothing but a book of don'ts. But Jesus neatly summarized all these rules when he said to love God with all your heart and to love your neighbor as yourself. He called these the greatest commandments or rules of all. By carrying out Jesus' simple commands, we find ourselves following all of God's other laws as well. So just kind of an interesting take on all of these different rules and regulations. Leviticus chapter 20 talks about some of the punishments for disobedience. And one thing that stuck out to me was verse 6. We don't hear a lot about this in the Bible, but we hear some. It says, I will also turn against those who commit spiritual prostitution by putting their trust in mediums or in those who consult the spirits of the dead. I will cut them off from the community. So set yourselves apart to be holy, for I am the Lord your God. My footnote about this says, everyone is interested in what the future holds, and we often look to others for guidance. But God warned about looking to the occult for advice. Mediums and spiritists were outlawed because God was not the source of their information. At best, occult practitioners are fakes whose predictions cannot be trusted. At worst, they are in contact with evil spirits and thus extremely dangerous. We don't need to look to the occult for the information about the future. God has given us the Bible so that we may obtain all the information we need, and the Bible's teaching is trustworthy. And, you know, this is more common in today's world than I think we realize. As a matter of fact, there's been some more things come to the forefront as far as people practicing witchcraft and lots of different things. And sometimes I feel like in the beginning, these types of things seem innocent at first. For example, I remember back years ago being at a slumber party and somebody brought out a Ouija board. And at that time, it seemed harmless and, you know, didn't seem to be a big deal. But really, anytime we are trying to communicate with the dead or communicate with evil spirits, God does not want us to do that. So even though it can kind of start out innocent, it can turn into something much deeper and much darker. So thank you guys so much for watching. I mentioned this on a previous video. I am going to the Holy Land in February, and the cowboy is sharing that with you as well. Let me pause this for a commercial break. Anyway, I am going to the Holy Land in February as the dogs continue to bark. And I encourage you to go check out my video about thrifting my way to the Holy Land. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, be sure to do so. Thanks so much for watching. Hank says, we'll see you next time.